You're listening to the Holistic Nootropics Podcast, your home for holistic, evidence-based cognitive enhancement strategies. And now your host, Eric Levi.
Bryan Carroll, welcome to the Holistic Nootropics Podcast.
Of course, thanks for having me.
So you're a functional nutritional therapy practitioner, just like me. I'm interested in what you do. You have a really cool brand and a really cool practice, Summit for Wellness. And I'm just curious, because there's a lot going on with the outdoors theme. You got the green screen, or I shouldn't say that. You're out in the wilderness right now doing this podcast. Amazing. You got a microphone set up probably to a tree or a generator or something. But how does the outdoors really apply to your life and your practice?
So the big thing for me is I am very type A personality. And if I didn't have an outlet to take a break from things, I would totally fill up my schedule with a million different things to do. And my outlet to just de-stress and get away from things was getting outside. And what I recognize by doing that, my stress levels go way down. I relax more. I get to see amazing places that I've never seen before. My breathing gets better. I'm breathing fresh air. I'm drinking fresh water. Like, how many people can say they actually have water directly from a glacier or, from nature? Not many of us. Most of the water that we drink is super processed and minerals are stripped out and then added back in. And the whole outdoors is just so fascinating. And I think it's a great way to replenish someone's health.
Yeah, you said a lot of interesting things there, especially when it comes to water. Like, I don't think people realize how big of a difference in physical and mental health just the purity of your water makes. It's like we're 70% or 80% water, and a lot of people are drinking this tap water, or you're drinking soda, or you're not drinking water at all. And how come I'm depressed? How come, I have anxiety? How come I'm overweight? How come it's like I just don't feel like getting after the day? And it's like, well, you're literally replacing the fluid that is the majority of what you're made of with something filled with chemicals.
It's this whole trying to supplement something without trying to think of the entire, the whole picture and putting all the pieces together. A lot of times you're just pissing away all these wasted supplements instead of actually utilizing the things that your body actually needs.
Yeah. The outdoors thing is interesting too. Like, I'm just looking at your background and I realize, like, when I go outside, it's like I'll go out into, in Puerto Rico, I live in the jungle, or, if you go to the forest, the woods, even you go to the beach, and you don't realize, like, there is a mental effect when you're looking at nature and you're looking at, like, trees, or you're looking at woods, and your eyes are actually, out in the distance. And at a subconscious level, it's almost like you're processing all of these different life forms. It's like you're processing all of these real visual stimuli that humans have evolved with for 2 million, 3 million, whatever it is, years, that if you're just sitting in your home watching a TV all day, it's like you're literally stripping away humanity.
Yep. Yeah, and you're talking about a really interesting point is we have all these manufactured colors in these screens that we're staring at. And once you step outside and you're actually looking at all the colors around you, you notice all these different types of colors and blending of colors and everything too from a different visual standpoint. And even, if you're looking up at the sky and you see clouds and you can see the colors of the clouds change throughout the day. And it's that type of stuff that I don't know if there's any evidence to suggest, how healthy that is for, like, your eyesight. But I feel like my eyes function so much better when I'm staring at that stuff than I do just staring at a screen all day long.
Well, I've actually found research on forest bathing. This idea of, like, going into the woods, and then, just the idea of how the brain functions differently when you're surrounded by, when you're literally bathing in the trees and the green. And I think there's been studies done, I can't confirm this, on the effect that your brain has when you actually look at it like a giant blue ocean. There are like these physiological reactions that happen in your brain that I think will put you into a parasympathetic state.
Especially when you're in urban areas, you have all this added stress that you don't even recognize as stress, but your body definitely recognizes it as some sort of stress. Another thing that I absolutely love about the outdoors, and you get this more when you spend multiple days outdoors, is a rebalancing of your circadian rhythm. So, you and I being in our office spaces in our homes, we have access to electricity. We can stay up late if we want to. We have all these different distractions. Whereas outside, if you're spending multiple nights out there, I mean, for the most part, you're going to bed right around the time the sun goes down, once it starts getting dark, and then you're waking up with the light of the day too. So you're getting this rebalancing of the circadian rhythm. And there has been some studies to show that if you're out there in nature for between 3 to 7 days, and you're naturally going to bed with the sun and waking up with the sun, then it can completely rebalance your circadian rhythm or when you go back home. But it's all these added distractions once we get back home that throws us off balance again. But the sleep quality outside is so much different than at home.
Yeah, I was talking to another doctor about this who actually lives not too far from you. She's in Oregon, Dr. Tracy Troncatella. And we were she mentioned this book called the Circadian Code, which talks exactly about that. And maybe a year or two ago, I might not have fully bought into it, but now that I'm here more engrossed in nature, it's the circadian rhythm is one of the most influential subconscious factors in my life right now, because it completely transformed, living this close to the equator and being out, because now it's like I'm up when the sun rises, and when the sun goes down, it doesn't take more than a couple hours and I'm just completely wiped out.
Yeah, and I would assume where you live now too is a lot less stress than New York. So that probably helps a lot too.
Yeah, except Puerto Rico throws you for some loops sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're like, yeah, this is pretty peaceful, and then an earthquake hits, and you're like, oh, there's no electricity for 5 days. Never dealt with that before, but okay, we'll roll with this.
Different type of scenarios that you run into.
Yeah, and you're also an herbalist, is that correct?
I do a little bit with herbs as well. I keep going back and forth with my studies, and then I get distracted by other things. But I've been studying Chinese herbs for about 5 years now.
And what really draws you to herbs or Chinese herbs specifically?
Well, I just find that it's fascinating. Like the more that you and I dig into the functional medicine realm, that's becoming more and more popular. It's the fascinating thing is it's like for the medicine realm, that's brand new. It's a brand new way of thinking, right? All these people is like, whoa, if we look at the entire body and try to find root causes to disease and work on those instead of just chasing symptoms all day long, then we can make some dramatic changes in someone. Well, the Chinese, they've been doing that for thousands of years. And that's why I think Chinese medicine is so fascinating, because they've been doing this for so long. They've been they look at different symptoms, but they're trying to figure out root cause. And then they have their whole, all the herbs that they've ever used and the different things that they work well with and how to combine them. It's just super interesting. And they've had a lot of experience, because our conventional medicine is 120 years at this point, and their medicine is thousands of years old. So I like to see the blending of the two worlds, because I think that's where we're going to see a lot of amazing changes in healthcare with people, because you're looking at 4 root causes, but you're also going to have the amazing aspect of emergency medicine that I do think conventional medicine does provide. But I don't think conventional medicine should or does a very good job of treating root causes. They're just more symptom-based.
I agree. And it's like you said, it could be so powerful if it was just okay to combine both. you know? And I think there's functional medicine doctors that are trying to do that, because I think a lot of functional medicine doctors have they've gone to traditional medical school, they've worked in emergency rooms, or they're trained as, just regular allopathic, in allopathic medicine. And then they'll go get their functional medicine certificate. And now they're thinking about, okay, well, this person who keeps coming back to me with tonsillitis, is it tonsillitis, or is there something more sinister afloat? Is there a more root cause that we can get this at, which is completely different than how I grew up. I was just going to the doctor and he was just pumping me full of antibiotics. Yep. But looking at it now, it was like, man, if he would have just taught me to not drink, a Coke a day and start my day with Lucky Charms, if he would have just told me that, and been like, maybe you should eat more natural food, eat more whole food, find something organic. I'm talking about years of my life would have been much better.
Yep. Yeah. And it's interesting that you talk about, when you were a kid, because I work with a lot of teenagers, especially high schoolers, for sport performance. And it's super interesting because right now, the amount of anxiety and mental health issues in that population is extremely high, like higher than it's ever been. And people are wondering, what's the cause of this? But then you look at the way they eat, and almost none of them, we won't push everyone out of that, but most of them do not eat very well. Most of them at this point are staying up past 2 to 3 a.m., doing Snapchat and social media and playing on their phones and all this stuff. So we know they're not getting sleep. They're not getting the nutrients that they need to create healthy hormones, healthy neurotransmitters, all this type of stuff. And people are sitting there trying to figure out, what could possibly be going on? Is it the social media? Is it the stress from school? Is it whatever? No, you're missing the big picture here. If they get good sleep, if they eat well and take care of their bodies, I would bet that most of these issues that we see would clean up pretty dramatically. Now, it's not all going to get fixed. There's always outliers, but I think that's going to make a huge difference right there.
So true, man. I think about this a lot. If we haven't hit it already, this health catastrophe, and you see it in people my age, you see it in people in their 40s and 50s. Like, we talk about chronic disease. What's it? 1 in 2 Americans have a chronic disease. But when you look at the kids, and we probably both know about the Pottinger's cats thing, with like the generational, the generational toxicity and the generational deformities that just pass down. Well, now we're in that 3rd or 4th generation of cats. And it's like, well, these kids have every piece of knowledge and information available to them, yet it's like you said, they're up till 3 in the morning on Snapchat. They're drinking a lot of soda. They're eating crap food. They're not sleeping enough. And then I would imagine with athletes, it's even more because they're putting their body through the rigors of sports.
Yep.
So, it's like if we could just kind of reset and go, okay, we're going to focus all of this holistic attention on the younger generation. And they're, I would imagine, fairly receptive to it. If you can build a habit younger, it tends to stick more. That's who really needs it. Because childhood obesity too, what's it, like 1 in 4 kids is considered obese or something crazy like that? It's insane.
I think it's 1 in 3.
1 in 3. That's, my God, man. Oh, that's criminal. That is criminal on the part of, you're talking about the food companies, the big pharma, all of it. That's bonkers.
Yeah, it's really sad. And I think, with all the situation going on in the world now, I think people are becoming more aware that having any type of health issue, you are more susceptible to some bad stuff, right? You're more susceptible to some new diseases that could be roaming the world and all that type of stuff. So I think people are becoming more aware that their health actually makes a difference. I just hope that we can spread the message to enough people and people are willing to make the change. Because you and I, we could wish that upon every single person in the world. Doesn't mean that's going to happen. Each person has to make the choice that's what they want to do, right?
Yeah. The anxiety really worries me too with these kids because, man, I couldn't imagine the pressure on a younger than 18-year-old kid to like keep your social media presence relevant. Yeah. and just dealing with like cyberbullying at the level that it probably happens, like just having a camera phone, we are animals with this stuff. We are just like animals, and it's like, yeah, we it's sophisticated technology, but it's like, it's still just a camera, and we're looking at crazy stuff. We're taking pictures and we're putting things on, like, luckily it didn't exist when I was a kid, because man, I could never get a job right now. I'd be fired from everything. I'd be fired from the internet. They wouldn't even let me do this podcast. But it's like just that. It's like, and then when this anxiety grows with you, and then it gets diagnosed, and then they put you on a pharmaceutical, and these psychopharma drugs, man, the number they do on people, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah, and they're starting to hand it out like candy. That's the scary part.
It's frightening to know that it's like, as a kid, like you'll never really be able to connect with who you are as you grow into an adult. It's like I look back 16, 17, even at 24, 25. I mean, I was like 3 different people between those times. You just have to kind of let it happen, and to not experience that growth, and to have your mind warped by these drugs, and to not have the foresight, to have somebody above you telling you that you have to take this because it's going to help you control a disease that you have, versus a natural reaction to stimuli that nobody really understands. That's unfortunate.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about that for those growing spurts that you go through, because a lot of elementary kids are getting put on ADD, ADHD medication. So they are literally going through most of their life never not being medicated. So like you said, they are growing up not ever knowing who they could potentially be without medication. That's a really interesting thought. I've never thought of it like that.
Yeah, the ADHD thing too, it's so sad to me that we've decided it. And I know there's a lot of people who listen to this podcast who deal with ADHD. I deal with ADHD. We talk a lot about ADHD on the podcast and the blog. And I've really evolved my view of ADHD over the years, from a thing where I think the knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, come on, that's not real, right? Like it's like the get off my lawn, old man response, like ADHD, these stupid kids, right? But when you really think about it, it's like, of course it's a real thing. When you have all of these different electronics, and I hate to say it, but when you have like Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and a million different, like at your fingertips, videos and information that you can watch, of course, how are you not going to get distracted, right? Like, let's be real. If you could just pull up porno when you were a 14-year-old boy at the drop of a dime, I mean, how distracted would you be, right? But I think it all comes back to, there might not be a holistic solution, but there's a holistic process that you can do, I believe, to manage these things. And you just, in the end, have to do the best you can. Yep.
That's where awareness comes in, right? That's what you're trying to do with the podcast. You're trying to get people more aware of all these different options. And going back to the root cause, how can we help ourselves get to a position where we're absorbing the nutrients, we're able to, like you do, the holistic nootropics, try to influence everything into our system to be able to get the best brain function that we can have, to the best performance we can have, and all that type of stuff. And that's where awareness comes from.
So when you work with like these student athletes, what is your process? What are you seeing a lot of, and kind of how are you helping these kids really optimize their performance?
Yeah, it's really interesting with teenagers, because they're getting to that point where they know it all, right? They think they know everything in the world. So the big thing for me is trying to get them to think through what it is they're putting into their body, or doing for their body, so sleep and all that type of stuff, by asking them questions on how they feel after doing certain things. So if they come to me and they're super tired, then I'll talk to them like, oh, what time did you go to bed last night? Probably around 2 a.m. And then you woke up around 6 a.m. to get ready for school. Yeah, 5:30 probably, because I have to shower and all that type of stuff. And then you just walk through it with them and be like, so do you think being tired like this, you're going to be able to perform your best? Or are you going to be able to make the right decisions in the sport that they're playing or anything like that. Or if a lot of them already are really worried about, grades and all that stuff at school because everyone pushes college really heavily and they're all worried about, will I ever make it into college? That lack of sleep, is that going to allow your brain to function the way that it needs to in order to get your schoolwork done? It's these little conversations where I try not to overwhelm them. It's just little tiny seeds that I'm planting so that they are more aware of the choices that they made and how it influences them so that they can then try different things to see if they feel better. So if we're talking about, you only got 3.5 hours of sleep last night and you wonder why you're tired, and then they start going to bed at 10 and then they're waking up at 5:30, how much different they feel with that, how much more focused they were at school, how much more they can, see ahead in the game that they're playing, and the better decisions they make in their sports and all that type of stuff. And then we can talk about food too. A lot of them, if they do eat breakfast, usually it's something super sugary and it just jacks them up. And so then we talk about, how do you feel after the food? So you have, something with, a coffee that's basically a milkshake and it's got 100 grams of sugar in it. How do you feel after that? Again, can you focus in class? How about that first period and second period? When do you get hungry after that? Oh, you're hungry in about 30 minutes after having something like that? Is that actually a meal? What does hunger mean for your body? What is your body saying that it needs more food for? And just walking through all those different types of conversations. And a lot of times it's nothing forced on my end. It's more going with what they say, because kids love to talk almost always. And then you just kind of help guide them and let them make the choices.
That's incredible, because even for adults, I think one of the most powerful tools that I have, and you probably have too, is like a food and mood journal. And having somebody fill that out. And I mean, we're talking adults, right? We're talking professionals, who have never connected how they feel to the food they eat. And when you write down, when you start keeping track of your food and you're like, oh, I don't know, I start every day with like a bowl of Frosted Flakes. And then, about 45 minutes later, I'm starving. And then so, I'll drink my 4th cup of coffee for the day. And then I'm feeling really hungry. And then I start to, then I'll start munching on, some potato chips. And then I'll have like a bologna sandwich or something for lunch. And then 2 o'clock, I'm just wiped out. And it's like, yeah, because you just threw your body for so many, you did so much warped chemistry in your body and fired off all of these different, sensitivities, and showed your body all of these substances it's not even biologically meant to handle, that it's overwhelmed. It shuts down. And, then they start to say like, okay, well, how do I fix that? And as soon as they make that flip, I think that's the key.
Yeah, and that goes back to what I said earlier, is people have to make the decision themselves. We can't make it for them. By trying to guide someone and get them to realize what blank does for blank, I think that really helps them to make those decisions, because the more they become conscious of, this choice I made over here did this to me over here, the more they can make the changes necessary to actually improve their health. So a lot of this stuff, I used to just throw protocols at people. Oh, you're coming in and this is going on. Then boom, here is your entire protocol that you need. And if you follow it step by step, you're going to get better. But from what I found, in a lot of cases, people have a really hard time following that, because it's a complete 180 of their current lifestyle. And by doing that, most people can't follow that, because that's not how they've ever lived. You do get some people that are really good at following directions that can follow something like that, and they do great. But the majority of people, they need those small changes that will have huge impacts over a dedicated time period. And then they'll start noticing huge improvements after that.
Yeah, I think it's the small changes thing that people don't realize, that sometimes, yeah, I mean, you could say my health is a mess. And then you're like, you have that, it's like the Sunday night like revelation of like, okay, tomorrow's Monday, everything changes. I'm eating a salad. I'm getting up early. I'm going to run 3 miles. I'm going to get a bunch of work. And then it's like, it never happens or it never sticks, right? Because you're just trying to do so much. You're trying to change. You're like, I'm just going to eat chicken and broccoli and it's going to be, you know, for every meal. And it's no. Sometimes it's like, all you need to do is just swap out your breakfast. Like just say, hey, everything else keep the same in the day. And then for your breakfast, instead of eating a bowl of cereal, try something with more protein and more fat and see how you feel after that. And for a lot of people, it's like, yeah, man, I didn't get hungry for like 6 hours. And then I just didn't have a big lunch and then I didn't get tired. And it was like, yeah, so all you had to do was just change like one little thing. And then from there, then the other stuff becomes more manageable.
Yeah, and it's pretty interesting because if people feel really good after like a breakfast, if they're a breakfast eater, then that usually has amazing impact the rest of the day. Like if you just went 6 hours without eating and you felt really good from that breakfast, well, you skipped out on those 4 cups of coffee. You didn't have your milkshake as a snack 2 hours after your normal breakfast, and you just saved yourself all this other stuff that could drag you down deeper into the hole that you were coming from. And it's like that little boost that you need to get on track. It's amazing.
Yeah, this is like my biggest issue with the biohacking community and the nootropics community. And it's that everybody, it's like we're taking an allopathic medicine approach to I don't want to say functional medicine, but like kind of integrative living to like holistic living, right? So it's like, okay, maybe you don't take like 5 prescriptions a day, okay, but you're taking 25 supplements, because basically what you're doing is like, I have a supplement, I have my probiotic, I have a supplement for my energy, I have a supplement for my brain fog, I have a supplement for my, inflammation, I got a supplement for this. And before you know it, it's like you don't realize, again, you're dealing with so much biochemistry that you're trying to make so many changes. And basic science is you build a baseline and you change one thing at a time and you record how does that change work. Was it positive or negative? If it was negative, okay, well, go back to the baseline and change something else. And again, I think it just comes down to like a societal pressure thing where it's like we have to be perfect all the time, we have to be on all the time, we can't get left behind. So if I'm not functioning optimally with so much juice during the day and I'm just happy all the time, then I'm not doing it right.
Yeah, and one of the sayings I'm sure you've heard is you can't supplement yourself out of a bad diet, right? So you can't just take a pill to fix everything. And I would say that we are very trained to take a pill for everything. But however, that might not be the way that you get fixed. You got to start with the foundations that you're talking about: good sleep, good food, movement, stress reduction. All that stuff is very important to build those solid foundations. If you take care of that stuff, you're probably going to get yourself 70% of the way that you need to be as healthy as possible. And then that last 20, 30%, that's where you start do more of the biohacking, and you can get a lot deeper into stuff and really fine tune your system and it just be at that optimal performance level that you've ever been at.
Yeah, because it's like there's that thing of when you wake up in the morning, do you feel great? No, it's okay. You don't have to, right? It's like you don't have to feel amazing every minute of the day. When you just kind of be grateful for like the little things, like, hey, my digestion's working great. I don't have these stomach cramps anymore, and I don't feel like passing out when I stand up too fast. When you just get those little things down, and then jump into some biohacking. Go mess with a supplement. Get like Bacopa or do some high dose lion's mane or something, and see if you feel like you don't want a brain buzz. You know what I mean? You don't want to buzz from supplements, right? Like if you want to buzz go get drunk or go, smoke some weed or, go do some magic mushrooms or something, right? But don't try to like take so much lion's mane with some ashwagandha, some phenylparacetam and some kratom or whatever. And then, be like, how come I feel like shit still? And because you didn't do anything. You just dumped a bunch of chemicals in your body.
Yeah, that must be all the herbs and the plants' fault, not your fault.
Right.
That you don't feel great.
Right. And that's the thing about plants too, is like they've got their own defense mechanisms. Like they are not about helping you. They're trying to like keep themselves alive.
Yep. Yeah, it's amazing. And the whole like, the biohacking community, there's a lot of biohackers out there, and that they're not really changing much. They're just getting all these different biohacking devices without changing their their lifestyle, and they're wondering why they spent all this money on something and they're not really feeling the effects. And it's because that stuff is doing very subtle effects, but it works much better if your body was already tuned up.
Yeah. You have to. You're a gut guy, right? Like you believe in was that where, kind of like your health thing started, was with gut? Or I've read that yours was kind of more related to mold. Is that correct?
Yeah. So a big health crisis was mold. I always sleep with windows open, or I used to, I don't anymore. Cause I just like that cold feeling coming over like my face as I'm sleeping. I like to be wrapped up in blankets with coldness on my face. But up here in Washington, it rains 10 months out of the year. So what was happening is the moisture from outside is slowly seeping into, the materials around my bedroom. And then, you sleep 7 to 8 hours. So you're breathing in all these mold spores. Well, I got to a point where I got so sick. I was basically, it was so close to being bedridden. Every time I'd wake up, the alarm clock would go off. I would count how many hours it would take before I could go back to sleep, because I just didn't want to get up and I had zero energy. Also got to the point where my whole body got stiff. I couldn't even look over my shoulder to change lanes on the freeway as I'm driving. Headaches all the time, fatigue, never wanted to go hiking anymore because I just didn't have the energy. And then going through a lot of conventional testing, could not figure out what the heck was going on. And then it was another NTP actually that brought up the idea of mold. And I was like, that's an interesting idea. So we went on a mold protocol and tried that out. And after a week, I was about 70 to 80% better. And that's when I knew, okay, this mold thing is a big deal. Yeah. So for me, mold is just crazy. And I'm sure you probably have a lot down there too. I'm guessing the humidity is pretty high and there's probably a lot of mold issues down there.
Dude, the amount of mold in my closets, in the rooms, because the humidity is crazy. There's water damage everywhere. And it's just, it's really the humidity. It's just relentless. They say like most of the cars here are just have so much mold, because when Maria came through, everybody's car got flooded out. And, you can correlate bad health to a lot of things here, but I think mold does play a big role in the health crisis that I see here in Puerto Rico for sure. And in New York too. When I was in New York, those buildings are, it's not the same climate as Washington, but it's very dark and cold and wet a lot. And absolutely. And nobody's talking about it.
No. And like one of the things I talk about a lot too is building of homes or anything really here in Washington never stops. So you're driving through in the middle of winter and it's dumping rain and you see all these homes that are being built and everything is soaked. And, I'm helping my parents build a house right now from the ground up, and just watching material, the mold resistant material that you get doesn't take much moisture before you start seeing mold start growing on it. So the fact that all these places are constantly just being soaked, and then I would almost 100% guess that they are not being dried out all the way. You're basically walking into a place that already has some mycotoxins. Now, a healthy system would be able to handle some of that, but when it gets out of control, then that's when you run into a lot of issues.
Yeah, I was just talking to another doctor who runs she runs a gut clinic in the Bay Area, and she helps health coaches about, gut issues. She's really educated on the mold thing. And she's basically said the same thing. She's like, well, if you have a healthy gut microbiome, like a really well optimized gut microbiome, you could deal with mold okay, not like an exorbitant amount. Like if you're sleeping in just, a sleeping bag full of mold, obviously it's gonna be a problem. But she's like, a good, healthy microbiome is built to handle an okay amount of mold. But unfortunately, most people, their microbiome is not optimized. And,
Right.
we are missing, again, going back to all of the nutrients and minerals missing from our food and all the bacteria missing from our food and the sterilization of antibiotics and hand sanitizer and all these things. It's like we've really set ourselves up to be more mold sensitive now.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point, is the sterilization of the entire world, especially right now, right? I'm super curious to see how our microbiomes react to the world and environment that we're going into right now, with everything being hyper cleaned. Yeah, I don't know what you think about that one.
I don't have a lot of faith, man. I'll be honest. I have not put on one dollop of hand sanitizer since this whole thing started. And they want you to, like in my building, they put up these little hand sanitizer things, and my security guards are like, you need to put hand sanitizer on. And it's, I'll go to the store and you have to wait outside and socially distance from everybody. And then they let you in. They shoot you in the face with like a thermometer thing. And then they have a little hand sanitizer thing. And they're like, now you got to go to the hand sanitizer. And I just like, I pretend I just like go up to it. I'm like, boop, boop. And then, I don't put any of that stuff on because I know what it is. Like I know what it does. And I'm just watching people bathing in that stuff. And everywhere you go, it's like sold by the pallet. And, people don't, it's not mainstream to understand like what you're really doing to yourself when you put that stuff on.
Yeah, and there was studies that came out a couple years ago that was showing even hand sanitizer on your hands is getting it into your microbiome and killing off your microbiome. And I mean, you said it exactly. People are literally bathing and wiping hand sanitizer all over their entire bodies because they want to clean any potential virus or bacteria, anything off of their bodies. So if a little bit on your hands can get into your microbiome, you're basically using an antibiotic on your skin that's getting into your microbiome and killing everything off. And it's no wonder that I'm going to assume we're going to have a lot of gut issues coming out of all this. And people living in super moldy areas, I'm sure they're going to run into interesting issues, and we'll just have to see. But that's going to be my prediction.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot. I mean, we talk about this thing, they're like a second wave is going to come. Well, of course a second wave is going to come because there's going to be a third wave and a fourth wave because, I think there's this element, and again, it goes back to, to your point we're talking about at the very beginning, which is when you connect with nature, like as humans, that's what we're meant to do. We're supposed to be physically interacting with our physical environment. Like you're supposed to be getting in the dirt. You're supposed to be, putting your hands on rocks and sleeping under the stars and yes, humans, we're supposed to be like talking and breathing on each other. We're supposed to be touching each other. Like we're supposed to be swapping bacteria and viruses. Does it sound gross? Yes, because that's how we've been conditioned. But I hate to say it, we are filthy animals. That's who we are, And it's no surprise that as we've cleaned up, chronic disease has also risen. And, with the microbiome, whatever it is, it's like we're not supposed to be killing off bacteria. Like nature put it there for a reason, and it's going to come back in droves. And people don't, again, understand that autoimmunity is tied to the gut, right? Like health, mental health, serotonin is made in your gut. If you're not making serotonin, yeah, of course you're going to feel depressed. And then you're going to go to the doctor and, they're going to say, well, you're depressed. Well, funny, because I only got 10 minutes to see you. So how can I make you happy in 10 minutes? Well, you could take this, serotonin reuptake inhibitor. And don't worry, there's no end date on it. Just take it until you feel better. Well, you never feel better? We'll just take another one, and it just goes on and on. And I hate to say it, man, we're going to see a spike of this stuff.
Yep. Well, especially now that we're learning more and more that a lot of neurotransmitters are made in the gut. And what percentage of people have crappy guts? Pretty high percentage. So people wonder why they're, getting depressed and all that type of stuff, and going back to anxiety and all that. A lot of that's coming directly from your gut. You don't take care of the gut, you're going to have neurotransmitter issues.
Yeah. I mean, just look at the amount of chemicals, whether it's in the food, the water. I mean, you just got to look at the sales. How much money did General Mills make last month? Or how much money did Kraft make last month? Or Pepsi or Coca-Cola? How much money do these people make? Well, take that money, and that's all in people's guts right now. And all of those chemicals that when you read that label, all of those, red nines and monophosphate this and dioxin this and, all these big words, man. These are chemicals that go in your gut, and they just wipe out your good bacteria. They mess with the health of your gut. And then it goes back to the whole thing. You're not absorbing even the good food that you have. You sabotage the good stuff that you have. And now you've created dysbiosis. And for everyone, it takes different forms. And in the end, you're right. Like, you can't make your neurotransmitters. You can't make your dopamine, your serotonin. You're going to get physical pain, and then you get toxin buildup because you can't physically flush stuff out of you. I mean, it just hits you from so many different angles.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that I was very excited about is people were actually testing foods and seeing how much pesticides can be found in foods. Because a lot of these pesticides are designed to destroy pests from the inside out directly through their guts, and as it goes through their systems, then they die. And to discover that it is being found in the food that most people are eating, all the processed food, and showing that, oh, look, it's not getting processed out, it's still in there. And now seeing how many people have autoimmune conditions, chronic disease, gut issues, all this type of stuff, it's pretty interesting that, correlation does not equal causation, but I would say that there's a pretty good correlation there.
Of course. Yeah. And I talk pretty harsh about the stuff. It's just my own personal beliefs, of course. Like, if I wanted to, I could sit back and take it and find all of the confirmation bias confirming data I want and all this stuff.
Right.
You're right. Correlation doesn't equal causation, but man, like, you're in practice, I'm in practice. You see the living manifestation of it, like, you see, okay, how much glyphosate do we spray on crops every single day, every single year? And you can take, I don't know if you run organic acids tests, but you can run glyphosate tests on people, and you could physically show them, like, look, this is how much glyphosate is in your urine.
Yeah.
That number should be 0. But it's all the way up here, and it's nothing you did. It's just so prevalent in all of the food, even the organic food. It's very hard to keep out of. It's in the water, it's in the ground, it's in everything.
Yep. Yeah, and it's influencing everything too. And like this year, I got honeybees, so I have a couple hives that I've been taking care of, and it's interesting because when the bees find something that's been sprayed with pesticides, they come back and they die, and you just see them a lot of times with their tongues out. There's other indications as well, but to know that there's spraying happening within a certain distance around where you're living, and you're that close to it, and you don't actually know where it is, but you know that it's wherever they're flying to, which is relatively close. So this stuff is being sprayed all around us. It doesn't matter where you are, it's happening.
Yeah, it's getting sprayed around us, and then the wind blows and it goes all up in, I have a friend who works in the food. He's like a food safety inspector. He's in that field. And he says, he's like, I was like, what do you think of organic food? He's like, we have a saying, it's called the wind blows. And it just basically means it's like you get these non-organic farms next to organic farms, and a little bit of wind, you got somebody spraying glyphosate, and the wind just pushes all that glyphosate into the organic farm field. And it's not just on the plants, but it gets in the soil. And once it's in the soil, now the whole plant for the next, I don't know, however many rotations it's going to have that influence. To what degree, I don't know. But this is why when I see like organic food, it's like, I want organic that was grown miles away from civilization, like, in Puerto Rico, I need food that was grown in the middle of the jungle where planes can't even get to, But I think that's a whole other part of the conversation, which is like, okay, well, now where do we source food from, And I think there's a lot more awareness being grown around that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And I live right above a valley, and the valley floods every single year. And you have organic farms and you have not organic farms. And you have some farms that they use Agent Orange to just wipe off and kill everything before they plant. And so all those chemicals, every time it floods, it's being lifted out of the soil and deposited elsewhere. So it's literally just moving down the valley. So if you're looking at sourcing of food, like you said, if you can find a farm that's far enough away from land that's not, or using a lot of pesticides and whatnot, or if you're in a valley or it's in a valley, look above stream too, just in case there is flooding, to know that, okay, all of these farms are not impacting this one because this one's above all of the other ones.
Yeah, that's some great advice. Well, cool, man. This has been a great conversation. I wish we can go longer, but I want to be respectful of your time. I'd love to have you leave the listeners and viewers. Where can they find you? I know you have a great podcast. If you want to shout out your podcast, where can they find you online? If they want to work with you, how would somebody get in touch with you?
Yeah, so since people are listening to this podcast, they can come listen to my podcast. It's the Summit for Wellness podcast. It can be found on any podcast player. And also they can find more about me at summitforwellness.com.
That's great. And just before we go, any parting words you'd like to leave the Holistic Nootropics viewers with? Any words of wisdom?
The main thing is take small steps. You don't have to change everything overnight. Just take small little steps and make small little changes, and you're going to get to whatever that goal that you're trying to reach. You're going to get there eventually, but it doesn't have to happen overnight.
Exactly. That's amazing. Bryan, Carroll, this has been truly an honor. Thank you so much for joining me today on the Holistic Nootropics podcast. I know anybody listening to this will get a lot of value, and go check out Bryan's podcast, Summit for Wellness. It's a good one of the best ones on the internet. And thank you, viewer, for watching or listening. For more information on what we do here at Holistic Nootropics, go on over to holisticnootropics.com. For show notes to this podcast, check out holisticnootropics.com/podcast. Thanks so much. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thanks for listening. For more brain-boosting info, in-depth articles, and show notes, check out holisticnootropics.com.